Now to the central bank, where there are stories is suggesting that there's been a postponement of the first monetary policy committee meeting in the year, which was slated for February 17. It's now perhaps being moved to March following delays in the release of the rebased consumer price index report that's being awaited by the National Bureau of Statistics. Reports say that policymakers are reconsidering the meeting because of that unavailability of updated inflation data. The first MPC meeting for 2025 normally is around January 27, 28, but it was moved to February, and now it's being moved to perhaps in March, and it's all connected to the rebased inflation and GDP figures, which is yet to be released by the NBS. Let's find out if there are implications to this, if we should be worried in any way. We have joining us for this conversation this morning Dr. Muda Yusuf. Dr. Muda Yusuf is the Chief Executive Officer of the Center for Promoting Private Enterprises in the country. So Yusuf, good morning, sir.
Good morning. Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Good to have you. Yes. So we're supposed to have MPC February 17th. That's next week. It doesn't look like we're going to have it. And the reason is connected to the rebased number, because, I mean, mostly MPC uses the inflation number for its decision. Unfortunately, we've been waiting for the rebased number since the 31st. We're promised it to be on the last day of January, but we haven't seen it up to date. Today is the 10th. So I'm wondering, does this have a wider implication for the economy?
Well, it has some implications because, you know, quite a lot of, a number of investors take a cue from whatever the policy position is, especially in the financial markets. You know, of course, people look at what the MPR will be, what the interest rate direction will be, and that will determine decisions, you know, as to whether you want to invest in bond, whether you want to invest in stock market, how you move your resources. And because these decisions are already programmed by fund managers, by all those in the investment space, this is creating some uncertainty, you know, and that, of course, is delaying investment decisions in critical areas, particularly, again, in the financial markets. And again, many of the investors in the real sector are also hoping that by now, at least, we'll have had some indications of easing of the monetary tightening space. Because a lot of investors are groaning under the weight of this high interest rate. And because of the way things are going, we are beginning to see some gradual recovery, some gradual stability. So we're expecting that by the time we have an announcement from the CBN, that will give a signal to the direction in which this interest rate thing will go.
But I mean, some of the economists I've spoken to before now, even are expecting that, well, the most friendly position we are going to get is going to be a hold, because there's a whole lot of uncertainty going on. Perhaps the MPC will want to see the impacts of some of the Trump's policies, you know, even the reforms that we say is building stability. So isn't it equal, not having the meeting, isn't it equal to a hold position?
Well, not exactly, because the hold position comes with some certainty. When a pronouncement is made that we are holding the race, you are sure that at least for the next 2 months or so, you expect that rate to. But as it is now, you never can tell what direction it will go. And just as you said in your intro, these decisions are data-driven. And the NBS had promised that by end of January, we are going to have the rebased figures. And it's also important for the NBS to also communicate, you know, that, okay, we are shifting the date from this date to this date. That will also help the central bank and help all the investors in the economy. That information and communication is also
I'm sure there's communication going on at the top between the NBS and the CBN, but I mean, even as a journalist, I've tried to reach the NBS to ask, when it was, I think it was on the 31st, that's the last time I tried to reach them to say, are we getting these numbers? And I didn't get any response. I haven't gotten any response up until now. So, I mean, I think, as you have noted, this brings another level of uncertainty.
Exactly.
And perhaps the scare from NBS, because there's also been a lot of conversations around what method or what number, what data are they going to release, seeing that the new method that was employed for the unemployment data has made it almost, not reliable or dependable at all. So perhaps they're trying to rejig, to give us a better data. But I think, as you said, communication
is very important. I must give it to NBS. They have engaged in very robust engagements with the stakeholders. Even up till, I think, around 2 weeks ago or so, they were still engaging. So we must commend them for the engagement. But by now, I'm sure they will have taken sufficient feedback, from their methodology and all of that, and decide on the way forward. And whatever it is, they should communicate that, okay, for a number of reasons, we are rescheduling the date in which we are releasing the revised figures. So that communication is important, both for the decision makers, I'm talking of the monetary authorities, and investors, and people like you, because you also owe the public the duty of informing.
Responsibility of keeping them informed.
Keeping them informed.
But Dr. Yusuf, what are you expecting from these rebased numbers? Well, we will be happy when we hear that our GDP is now bigger. Perhaps we can retain or regain our biggest position on the continent space. But there's also the talks that we might get a lower CPI, which people are asking, will it really capture our reality?
Well, in terms of the GDP, just as you said, we're expecting a much bigger GDP size because the rebasing will capture a lot more sectors. Because even in spite of all the challenges that the economy has been facing, some sectors have been growing and doing well. And, a lot of structural shifts has also happened. And that will, of course, give a much bigger GDP, and that will help also in the perception. That may not change anything dramatically here, but it will change perception of investors, whether locally or internationally. Take, for instance, if we now emerge as the largest economy on the continent. That will be good news. Then it will also help, at least, for us to define the current structure of the economy, which sectors are doing well, which sectors have actually been elevated as a result of what has happened. Even this reform has also changed brought a lot of structural changes in the economy. So this data will help. It will help investors, it will help perception. And perception is very important. Perception is reality. So that is okay. For the CPI, of course, I was part of the stakeholders, one of the stakeholders' engagement on the methodology. They are talking about weighting, they are talking about issues of spending, the number of goods in the basket. Yes, that is fine, but I don't expect any major shift, in the outcomes. What will change the outcomes for the CPI or for inflation figures in 2025? I think it's likely going to be the base effect. That's my expectation. Of course, we have some conversation again around the weighting, the distribution of what should go to food, what should go to restaurant, what should go to accommodation, and all of that. So all of this feedback has been taken on board by the NBS, and I'm sure that by the time...
So what's the delay, Dr. Yusuf? What's the delay?
We come back to communication. They are keeping everybody in suspense, and they need to communicate. That is very important.
Yeah, it's very important. But talking about communication, just hold your breath for a bit. For our DSTV viewers now, we have to lead you to the executive governor right there. There's a flag off in Adamawa State, the executive governor of Adamawa State. There's a flag off of the construction of the ultra-modern shopping complex in Jimeta, Yola, the capital of Adamawa State. The Right Honorable Ahmadu Umaru Fintiri is waiting for you there. That's our DSTV viewers. But for our other viewers on other platforms, for the international, the UK, and as well as the domestic, we're right here on Business Morning. And if you're watching on YouTube and you still want to stay with us on Business Morning, just switch to the next streamline and you will see this conversation. All right, so we're talking about communication. Yeah, and we do hope that they will communicate because, if the NBA doesn't talk to the media at first, we are there to be used as a platform.
Exactly.
You know, so if I have tried to reach out to them, we don't know what's going on, we don't know when to expect the data. We don't want another level of uncertainty to be built into the market.
Exactly.
Since we're getting a bit of stability when it comes to the currency and all of that. So I don't think this should come in. If there are things to be done, then, I mean, let Nigerians know.
Very important, because decisions in the marketplace are information-driven. They are data-driven. And the biggest source of data now is the NBS, as far as these macroeconomic indicators are concerned. So it is very important that we get an update from NBS on when we should expect.
We'll keep asking. I guess that's our job right here. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Muda Yusuf, for your time.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
All right, let's take a break. When we come back, we're staying on this issue. Another perspective is what we have after the break. Stay with us.